This episode of the Answer is Yes Baja Sessions is brought to you by Baja Bound Insurance Services. Driving to Mexico? You can buy and print out your Mexican auto insurance policy online in minutes with their easy-to-use website. They also have great travel information to help you plan your trip south of the border. Visit bajabound.com.
Hello, this is Ryan Thomas, and you're listening to the Baja Sessions. Over the last 3 decades, I've lived, worked, and played from the top to the tip of the majestic peninsula of Baja California. And because of this, I've met some incredibly interesting people with equally interesting stories. And today on the Baja Sessions, we're going to chat with one of them.
Jose Grijalva is the president and race director of the SCORE International Off-Road Racing Series. Today on the Baja Sessions, he shares the story of his passionate journey from spectator and participant to the promoter of the world-famous Baja 500 and Baja 1000. We also briefly discuss the recent and tragic motorcycle accident involving our mutual friend and fellow competitor, Josear Carrasco. Please check the show notes for a link to his GoFundMe page and donate if you feel so inclined. Hey, Jose, it's great to have you on the Baja Sessions this morning. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Ryan. Thank you.
Well, another cool and interesting guest on the show here today, and another one that I've been friends with, now. It's got to be close to 15 or 20 years, Jose, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I think I actually met you back in 2000, just that you don't remember, because I did help out in the Baja 2000 with Wide Open, and then I came in full-time in 2002.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, we go back a long way.
Okay, so the big question that I've had for a long time, and I've never asked you about this, and it has to do with your name. I just called you Jose, but then other people call you Abelardo. Obviously, there's Jose G, because your last name, I think, for some gringos is hard to say. And I know that Mexicans have at least usually 4 names.
Yes, well, it's a Mexican, you know.
So yeah, that was what I was going to ask you. Is Abelardo a Mexican? Is that a Mexican name?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, definitely. Well, my full name is Jose Abelardo Grijalva and Carranza. So that's in Mexico. We have 2 last names, and it's some people in the U.S. also have, especially if you're Catholic or something like that. They put a bunch of names.
Got it, but Abelardo is a, and maybe I'm just ignorant or haven't met enough people, but I've never met another Mexican with that name. Is it uncommon, or am I just not, or is it?
It's not a real common name, but actually, Big Bird in Mexico, his name's Abelardo. So I'm not really thrilled with that, but that's just my grandfather was Abelardo, so that's why I'm Abelardo.
Okay, well, that was part of the reason why I brought up your name. I wanted to you hold a unique position as a professional today, and that's the eventual direction we're going to go, which, by the way, Jose's talking to us from Ensenada today. But I wanted to start out kind of from the beginning, and I thought I was going to uncover something a little more interesting by asking about your name, because I thought it was like German or something. But you mentioned that it was your grandfather's name. So let's start out from somewhat of the beginning. Are you originally born and raised in Ensenada?
Yes, I am.
That's what I thought. And I also know you've got or had land and or roots up in the farming community of Ojos Negros. So tell me just a little bit, Jose, about how you ended up, well, I guess you were born in Ensenada, but the background, how your family ended up in Ensenada, or have they been there as long as you can remember, or as you know?
Well, actually, on my father's side, he was born in Tucson, Arizona. So he was born in the U.S.
Ah, okay.
Yes, and my mother was from Colima, so she was more like mainland, and my grandfather on my mother's side, he was a ship captain, so that's how he ended up here and met my grandmom, and then my mom moved over here. So it's a long story on both ends, and how my dad came here. Just followed his family. They brought him here when he was like 5, and have no reason why in Ensenada, but I'm really glad they did it.
So then was I think you speak pretty much perfect English, although you did just do something that I'm going to bring up here in a second. But have you spoke English in the house since you were born because your dad was from Tucson, or did you learn English afterwards?
No, afterwards, just watching TV. When I was like 3 or 4, we got cable TV, and there was nothing in Spanish. So I sat in front of that TV just watching cartoons in English, and I don't know when I started understanding it. So I think that's how it came about. So that's how I learned English.
It's amazing how kids can learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what I called you out on something that I don't even think you recognize, and I'm not. You said he instead of she. I think speaking about your grandmother or your mother, and then you corrected yourself real quick. And I'm not bringing that up to make you feel bad. What I'm actually doing is drawing the similarity. I called out a buddy on Facebook the other day because he said he was talking about being at La Bufadora, but he said El Bufadora.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually do it. I was gonna lambaste him on Facebook for not calling it La Bufadora. But I think it's interesting because it seems to me a lot of times when Mexicans or Spanish speakers are speaking in English, the he-she gets confused. And flip that, I feel like a lot of times the masculinity or femininity of words in Spanish, English speakers screw that up when they're trying to speak Spanish. Do you see that? I mean, will you admit to struggling with he, she, and then do you also recognize that gringos say...
Sometimes. I think it's normal for... It's not my language, so I think it's normal for everyone to screw up sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've done some major screw-ups anyway, but I think the important thing is to actually try and I mean, sometimes even to stand up in front of 1,000 people and speaking not your language. It takes, and I think we do a good job. And I there's a lot of, I think culture wise is very different because Americans they try their best and their Spanish is always really bad, and we're afraid to speak English in front of other people. So it's. I don't know. It's just like a culture
I
thing.
didn't bring that up to make you feel bad or throw you under the bus. What I was
worry.
recognizing, I can remember with a mutual friend, Josear Arsate, who spent a lot of time riding in a car with me. He always struggled with one and a, and he would go one cow, watch out for one cow instead of watch out for a cow.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, and you might even be part and parcel to this. I agree with you. What's important is that we try. And I did try when I lived in Mexico, and I still today. We ought to be actually doing this in Spanish in all reality, and maybe we'll try some of that here in a second. But there was a point living in Southern Baja where I got decent. I'm probably better than decent at Spanish, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts if you remember my Spanish. But I kind of plateaued, and what I realized was that I was... And I was butchering certain things. I was saying phrases that I thought were right. And most of my interaction with Spanish speakers was with employees that worked for me. And somebody finally called me out and said, that's not the way you're supposed to say that. And I think it was Andres Alonso. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me? Or why doesn't anybody else tell me? And like, well, you signed their paychecks. And I was like, so I sat everybody down one time. I was like, okay, listen, I know I'm the boss, but if I'm saying something incorrect, let me know so that I don't just continue to do it wrong. But anyways, that was a rabbit hole. Like I said, we go back quite a ways, and I think I remember the first time seeing you were delivering helmets down or something, and
exactly.
Meeting
exactly. I drove helmets. I think no. We went in on Puerto Cancun.
That's it.
And we met you there with Coqui and I. Drove all night, took helmets, and none of them wanted to use the closed helmets. They were happy with the open face helmets. So. Oh, but anyway, it was a waste, but it was an interesting trip. That was the first time that you saw me working full time for Wide Open.
So, readers, I apologize. We're just kind of listeners, I apologize. We're taking a trip down memory lane here, but so that's where we start. And so I know a few other things, a lot of things, but some things I want to bring up. You're a father of 4 girls, is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Jeez. And I'm a grandfather now, so.
Well, so that was what I was going to say. I was just flipping through your Facebook page this morning, and you were married in 1993. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
How old are you?
I'm 47. In November, I'm going to be 48.
Okay, so yeah, we're close in age. You got started pretty dang early. Married in 1993 and 4 kids and grandkids already. Holy moly.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm pretty sure I've met all 4 of your kids, and I've met your
You
wonderful
have.
wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all still in Ensenada now?
No, my oldest got married and moved to Tecate, which is pretty close.
Yeah.
She's been texting us all morning. She wants us to go and visit her. So, I mean, we see each other every week. We're always in touch.
Awesome. So family man, married, born and raised in Ensenada. And so our relationship started back, like I said, 2002, working for Wide Open Adventures. Can you, again, we're going to end up at a current destination talking about what you're doing now, but prior to Wide Open, the off-road adventure excursion company that we both worked for, what were you doing?
Well, I've always been involved in farming and in the cattle business, following the steps of my father, pretty much. I've always loved that. And if I had a choice, I mean, I love what I do right now, but the cattle thing, I would love to go back, and that's one thing I have in mind right now, that I can do both. I can do what I'm doing right now and start racing cattle again. 'Cause I love that.
So you're a cowboy at heart.
Yeah. No, I'm good with horses. I've done everything since I can remember. I've been riding horses and working in corrals and just doing all that work. My father never gave me any special treatment on because I was his son. I mean, I was working side by side with all the ranch hands, and so I learned everything.
So you're talking about cattle and ranches and farming. Has that always been in the Ojos Negros area of northern Baja?
Yeah, well, my dad used to have properties and partners in Sonora also. So we would go back and forth sometimes, and but yeah, our base was always here in Ensenada and mostly Ojos Negros.
So did you live in Ojos Negros ever, or were you always living?
I actually did. I lived a few years in Ojos Negros, and when I went like full time on my own with farming, and it was neat. I mean, it was a different experience.
So the obvious question for me then, and I think I probably know the answer. The interest in or passion for off-road racing, did that stem from just having it all around you as you grew up every June and every November in Ensenada? And I'm referring to the Baja 500 and the Baja 1000, if anybody doesn't know what I meant by June and November.
Yeah, definitely. Well, going back a little bit, I was born in 71, so racing was already a part of Ensenada. And I lived, my father's house was, still is, half a block from the wash. So I would run to the wash.
You got to explain what the wash is.
Well, the main wash that in Ensenada runs through the middle of town, and that's where the race goes through. And so I was just amazed at racing since I can remember. In kindergarten, I would watch the races. I was one of the biggest fans. No one else in my classroom was like, they even knew what off-road racing was, and I knew everyone. I knew Walker Evans. My biggest like idol was Roger Mears, and all my room was filled with posters about the Nissan truck and everything. So
you'll be happy to know he's been on this podcast.
That's awesome, man. I've been on Roger's case of inviting him to be the Grand Marshal for the next race, and I think we're close to it. So
awesome.
He is the man for me. I mean, everyone has his own, like Ivan and Raglan and everyone there's, but back in the day, Roger Mears for some reason was my idol.
That's cool. Well, so you, I envision as a gringo that's raced up that wash, and you say your dad's house was close to the wash or whatever. I mean, I've always thought, like, man, that wash is some people's backyard. Like, the kids just get to walk out into the backyard and watch the race go straight up the wash in their backyard. Am I like glorifying what that is? Is it a nuisance for everybody? And were you that close?
No. And we proved that, because I'm going to go to June. I mean, we proved that Ensenada loves it and needs that to keep racing through the middle of town. We just did the Baja 500 out of Estero Beach, south of Ensenada, and there was a lot of negative things with the locals that they wanted to race. So they want to race back in town. we thought it was a great thing, but anyway, we can talk about that later.
Sure.
But yeah, running through